Hey, it's Jeff at 650 Cycle. Let me tell you what we got going on today. This particular bike is a 1980 Yamaha XS850, and I am working on replacing the clutch in it. I have pulled this cover off. The clutch is in here. I've pulled this cover off several times. I pulled it apart, I broke a bolt, I drilled and tapped it, put it back together, and my fix broke, so I had to order a new clutch basket. Or not a new one, but I sourced one on eBay, and I now have the part to put in here, so now all of this has to come off. This is kind of going to be a how-to video of how to take this cover off, because when I started on this, I'd never taken a cover off the side like this, and couldn't really find a good video for how to do it, so I'm going to try to make a good video today, something decent. Obviously I have some stuff removed. Kickstarter, foot peg, rear brake lever. They're all sitting right here. They've been removed. Special tool, you gotta have a pulley puller for the magneto in there, and we'll get to that. Let me show you the replacement clutch basket. This is what has to go in. I don't need these. I have some brand new friction plates and steels. Have brand new ones in there. What happened was I broke one of these bolts off in here. I drilled and tapped it, put it back together, and it didn't hold. Not surprising, I'm not great at that kind of stuff, so I really needed this piece and one bolt more than anything. Now I have them. I have a whole kit, so I'm going to put this in that bike. So let's get started. You might think you need to take this off, but you don't. It's actually easier if you don't take this off. The one thing you got to be careful of are all the wires for your stator come through down here, and you want to be careful not to stress them or to rub them on something and cut them or anything like that. So just be careful of those. This particular one has an engine guard, which makes this bolt a little difficult to take out, but if you put a little pressure here, once it's loose, you can pull it out. This will move forward far enough to pull it out, so I didn't have to take this all the way off. First step is I'm going to take all of these Allen head bolts off the sides, and if you don't have a tool like this, actually this one is this, if you don't have a tool like this, get one, because the old L-shaped Allen tools are terrible for this stuff. This is so much nicer and so much easier. Invest in some of that. The oil has already been drained out of this, so but that would be the first step, because once you pull this off, look, this is your oil sight gauge. That means there's oil sitting in here. Drain your oil first and then start on this. And I'm just going to go through and I'm going to loosen all the sides, and then I'll pull everything off. I'll show you all of that. Alright, I got all those side bolts out. I'm going to take this piece off first. This has your actual stator in it, so if you're replacing a stator, this is what needs to come off. Oh, I got one bolt I didn't take off. This one down here, there's actually a heat shield on this one for the cables. The exhaust runs right close to it. So, as you can see, there's a heat shield down there. Make sure that gets back on there. I'm sure there's a reason for it to be on there. Oh, I got another one I didn't take off. It comes off really easy when you get all of them out. Now, there's different lengths. On this one, it's pretty easy to tell where the really long ones go, where the long ones go, and where the short ones go. But if you need to set up a template so you can see what's going on this particular piece, this engine guard is kind of in the way. There we go. Because it kind of has to come out straight. So as you can see, these wires are down here. I'm going to pull my oil cable over here so it doesn't stress them really bad when I set it on there. It's not pulling the whole weight of this, because this is quite heavy. Now the next thing we need to do, we're going to turn this out and then pull this off. This is your magneto. That's what you need this thing for eventually. We'll get this off and see where we're at. If you have an impact of some sort, whether it's pneumatic or battery powered, it is very helpful in this stuff, because otherwise you have to put a ratchet on or socket on this or a wrench, and then you have to hold this somehow, otherwise the whole thing spins. So that part is helpful. Now, to get this off, all you gotta do is thread this in there and hit that with the impact, and it'll pop that off. Can't get this cover off until you do that. If you were just doing a stator, wouldn't need to do this part, obviously. Correct. So that bolt that I took off that holds it in there is a 17 millimeter. This happens to be a 3/4. Forward. That's all you got to do, and it pops this off. Without that impact, that job is really difficult. But it has to be done. When I pull things apart, I generally try to lay them out as I pull them apart so that I can put them back. I'll just throw them into a big pile. Once we get into it, you'll see how that helps. This piece, I think I get it, yeah, looks like it. This piece is now ready to come off. There we go, there's your internals, and it's dripping oil all over just like you would expect. Okay, from here, on a Yamaha XS850, this piece needs to come off. So, again, a couple bucks a piece, and they make your life so much easier. Can you imagine doing this with a standard Allen key, standard Allen wrench style? See how much easier this is. Take the time to go buy them. This happens to be, it says HW6, and this one is an HW5. I have found that on these Japanese motorcycles, those two fit just about everything. There is one size that I have that is bigger than that, I do have, because once in a while I run into that. All four of these bolts are different lengths. It goes shortest to longest counterclockwise around here. But as I pull these off, you can keep them on there. That's what I did. Just keep them on there. And of course everything's covered in oil, so it's really slippery, slimy. You're going to be dirty. This piece right here just pops off. It does have a guide here to slide it, so you do have to kind of pull it straight. But I just left all those bolts in so that they're in the right spot, but I do know if they do happen to fall out, where they're at. Now, at this point, I would suggest having a good quality snap ring plier set. I do not have a good quality snap ring plier set, but I do have a snap ring plier set, and I have managed to make this work. There is just a regular snap ring right here. And it is typical snap ring. They're not fun, they're a pain in the butt. But I got it off. This is where I start laying stuff out in order so I know where it goes going back on. There are some, in here there are some spacers, some just stuff that you want to go back in that same spot. Now, there is a snap ring that holds this piece in as well. This is your drive that comes off the crank, and then this piece is separate from this gear. So this piece will come out by itself, and then you can take this whole thing off. But in order to do that, you have to get this snap ring out. And this one can be a bear. I'm sure somebody has some tricks how to do this easily. Sometimes they pop right out. Usually they're a big pain. Once you get it out of that groove, you can pry it a little bit. Snap back in there. There we go. Where'd it go? That's usually what they do. They go flying all over the place. Got it. This particular one has a hole here and then a groove here. Not sure if it's an original one. Not sure if that piece was broke off. That's how it was when I pulled this apart. So probably should replace those if possible, but I don't have any. So this middle section just pulls out. You'll see the tabs in here that it fits into on that back piece. And then this whole chain drive can come off. Now we have to take this piece off. And this piece just slides out as well. This is the one that has some washers on it. So we'll make sure they come with it. There's a washer on the inside. And then there's another snap ring. Wonderful. This is the actual clutch basket. You can see I have a hole here instead of something holding it in. Somebody suggested just running it without that one, but the clutch doesn't disengage like it should. Doesn't disengage the transmission, so obviously it doesn't work. One more snap ring and we're home free. Kinda. There, we got it. Now, this particular shaft is a little narrower right here. The OD is a little bit smaller here than it is here. So make sure, I think the snap rings are the same. Now what we need to do is we need to take all of these bolts off. That's a 10mm. People are always crying they're losing their 10mm. It's a problem if you are, but I have a bunch of them, and my preference is a deep well 6-point. I think with the 6-point, I end up not rounding things off as bad as a 12-point. These are brand new springs, so these are the springs that I want to use when I put it back together. And at this point, I'll probably point out that I'm not a mechanic of any kind. I like doing this as a hobby. I've worked on stuff my whole life. Figured out how things work, how to take it apart, how to put it back together. Sometimes I need help and I gotta go to a professional and have them tell me how badly I screwed up, but I'm working on it myself, so live and learn. I do enjoy this kind of stuff, but again, it's a hobby, it's not a profession. So main thing I wanted to show is how to get this off, because like I said, I couldn't find a video of how to do it. I'd like to try to put something together that shows pulling this clutch basket off. I'm not going to show the reassembly procedure because it's just the opposite. I'll show you where I got laid out when I get this off. Now, you might think that's all of it. It's not. You can take your cover off and all your discs out and be aware that you have spacers and shims and where they're supposed to go. Pay attention to that when you pull this off. I have a brand new clutch, friction plates and steels in here. Now this is the fun part. Where did it go? There it is. This has this little steel bar in here. This little steel bar goes in here, and this little steel bar is what, when you pull the clutch lever, it pushes out against this and separates your clutch plates and your friction or your steels and all of that. This is what disengages the clutch. So on the back side of this there is a ball bearing, and when you pull the clutch lever, this goes forward and it disengages your clutch. Don't use this steel bar, don't lose this piece or it won't work. Don't forget to put it back in there. It will only go in there one way. It's a rectangle, so it's only going to go in there one way, but it was pretty easy to line up. I didn't have any problems. I just set it in there and then set that cover in. You know, I put all the steels and friction plates and everything in there, and then put that cover on it, and it slid right in there. It wasn't a big deal. If you just eyeball it like that, it pops back in there fairly good, but don't lose that. Okay, now we have one more nut right here that's got to come off. This has, I don't know what the technical term for it, but there's a steel plate behind it that gets bent up around it to keep it from turning itself off. It keeps it's like a lock for that nut. So I'm going to work on getting that off. Once I get that off, pull this off, and we'll see all of the parts all over the place. Alright, I got this off. And then this steel plate behind it, you can see, I don't know what they call it, but it bends over, it's grooved, bends over the nut to keep it in place. But once that is done, then you can pull this off. That's all you need to do to remove the clutch. Now to put it back in, obviously it's just the opposite. If we see this one, if it broke, it's broke. So it needs replaced. You can kind of see I have everything laid out as I pulled it off. We pulled these off, this off, that off, that off. Kind of keep everything together. Watch any washers, any spacers, anything like that. And then when it goes back together a lot easier. There's a few things, I wasn't going to show this going back together, but there's a couple things that came up with me that I wanted to make sure this goes in there. As you're putting this back on, there are little arrows on a few of these, and on the outside of this there are some arrows, and those are supposed to line up. So as you put this back in there, there's an arrow right here, so I'm going to try to make sure that arrow goes there. I'm not sure if it's critical, but that was what I had read on it, and so that's the way it's going to go back together. The other thing is that I kind of got these aligned by hand before. I didn't have any issue. Oh, you know what? I forgot to put this thing back in like I told you you were supposed to. Alright, let's do that. And we got this thing. I don't know what it's called, push bar or something. I'm going to put that right in there. Where'd my arrow go? My arrow is right up at the top. So I'm going to take an arrow and put it right up at the top. And that push bar is in there now, so that's good. I might have to adjust the clutch out a little bit, the clutch lever assembly. It doesn't feel like it wants to sit down in there where it's supposed to. So, but if you see these little cogs need to fit over these gears when it's in there. Let's see if I can get it this time. I think that thing might have moved on me. There we go. It snapped down in there. You see it's fairly flush right here, and it's flush right here. That tells me that it's all sitting on there where it's supposed to. This is sitting on, this is the old one. These rings are now sitting on these. So when it's sitting like that. So I'm going to put the springs back in, put this snap ring and everything back in. And we will be back in business. Putting it back together. There we go. I got this cover back on, I got the stator back on. If you look down here, this heat shield, these wires have little grommets that go right in a groove here. They need to be in there so that this will go snug up against the case. Other than that, I have everything back together, and I need to put the foot peg and brake pedal and kickstarter and that stuff back on, but it's ready to go. So, like I said, I am not a professional mechanic. I just wanted to put something together so that if you have one of these and have never taken one apart, like me, and like to look at a video before you do something like that, I did that. So I do occasionally do things with various different motorcycles. So if you're interested in other motorcycles, check out my channel. I do some rides on there as well, along with wrenching. So check that out, 650 Cycle. That's where we're going. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you're out there riding, ride safe.